Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man podcast. My name's Rory Paquette, and I am, as always, your very grateful host. Thank you so much for being here today. Folks, I can't tell you how much it means to me that you folks keep listening. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your subscriptions. I appreciate you folks contacting us and letting us know how you feel about all these things that we talk about. I want to put this out there to everybody. If you are not in our private group, please feel free to apply for it. It is The Power of Man Within on Facebook. Come check us out. You fill out a short application, and we'd love to have you. If you're not in there, look us up. And there's a link in our show notes. Um, if you are a friend of the program, however, you know what's coming next because we got to knock this out. We got to pay our bills, and I need to have a sip of my preferred beverage. Oh man, this stuff is delicious. It's absolutely fantastic. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful, just like my wife. That is Freedom Hill Coffee, at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. They brew a mean bean. They do all the right things for all the right reasons. It's a mean cup of Joe. They support veterans, and we support them. Look them up at Freedom Hill Coffee. Tell them Power Man sent you. All right, folks, here we go. We have a fantastic guest today. Frankly, when I was, looking over some things and he and I were going back and forth, about getting on the podcast, I felt like I was talking to myself. We have a very aligned mission. We are both fathers. We both really care about that sort of above and beyond all other things. And I really can't wait to have this guy on the show today, pick his brain, find out where he came from, what he's doing, and what got him into our line of work, which is helping fathers and husbands to live their best lives. Please welcome to the program the host of two podcasts, and you guys need to go check these out. Driven to Thrive podcast and Read Me a Story, Dad podcast. Please welcome to the show, Brent Dowlen. Brent, how you doing?
Rory, I'm excited to have a conversation this morning, man. It's been fun just chatting before and getting ready for the show. It's going to be a good talk today.
I appreciate that. Thanks, man. Well, before we get rolling, tell everybody a little bit about you, about your podcast. Just give them a who's who.
Absolutely. So my name is Brent, and I'm a men's coach. I have a passion for helping men live their best lives because, in my worldview, as men develop into the best version of themselves, that's how we fix almost all the problems in our world. That's how we make the world better for our kids going forward. I have two daughters. I have a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old. I'm a girl dad and I love absolutely, like, it is my favorite role, honest to goodness. I have an amazing wife. We've been married for almost 24 years. And Sarah is the co-owner of my business. We are thick as thieves. We've known each other and been together for about 27 years. We've been married for almost 24. She is my best friend, and I feel so incredibly blessed. Just last night, we had a family game night. We played some games and ate some desserts and just had a good time laughing and playing and cuddling with my girls before they went to bed. And I just feel incredibly blessed because the relationships with my family are the core of everything I am. I started podcasting back in 2020 uh, and been doing it ever since. I've we just recently went through a rebrand. So anybody who catches the video version of this, you'll see my name tag says the Fallible Man podcast. I had to explain that to too many people, so we rebranded actually after 5 seasons and 343 episodes. We rebranded to the Driven to Thrive broadcast, and we talk about purpose and intention in the lives of men, which is we so I was listening to the podcast earlier for the Power of Man. It was like, oh my goodness, this is going to be such an easy conversation because it is like talking to a brother from another mother. So we are definitely on the same track. And then I do a children's podcast, the Read Me a Story Dad podcast. And I honestly, like, it started as a passion project. I pitched this to my wife about I want to say 2 years ago now. We were driving around Christmas, doing some Christmas shopping. And I told my wife, it's like, I talk about men need to set an example because there are always young people looking up to them. And I was just thinking about all the blessings in my life. And I love reading to my daughters. Been one of my favorite things. It's just reading my daughters. We still read together as a family. We have like 3 books. Big now we went from kids books to now we're I think in the Harry Potters. Uh, but we sit down and read together as a family still. And I thought about all these kids who don't have somebody to read them a book. And it might be because both their parents work full-time jobs trying to make ends meet these days. Or it might be because they don't have both parents at home for whatever reason. There's no judgment on anybody. I just wanted a safe place for kids to be able to go and have a story read to them. It fuels learning, it fuels creativity, it does so much for kids. I told my wife, like, I want to do this. I don't want to advertise on it. I don't want marketing on it. I just want a place where kids can get a story read to them and know somebody cares.
I love that.
And
Yeah.
so we just published our 95th episode of that. I do 1 book a week. It's just a simple kids book read to kids, and just a reminder that somebody loves them.
I love that. I mean, that's everything else, and we're going to get back to what you talked about, solving all the problems that are in our country right now. Because I could not agree with you more, and I think that's definitely something we need to unpack in more than just one sentence. But the Read Me a Story Dad podcast was so unique when I saw it, and I just started thinking about it, and I wish that I had had a chance to hear it before this broadcast. I am so sorry because I love doing my research, and I saw that almost last minute, and then I went, oh, how did I miss that when I read, your bio at first, and I went, oh my gosh, I got to ask him about it. But it was such a unique idea, um, and the fact that you want to keep it pure, I love that too. Um, what made you want to take that? What you do with your kids and take that and I mean, I know you want to make a safe place and stuff like that, but what made you want to put it into a podcast?
Roy, I fell in love with podcasting when I started doing it. So jump back a few years. I actually started my podcast as a uh, platform for my other intention. I started writing a book back in 2020 that I have still never finished.
Okay.
So I'll just throw that out there before you ask.
I'm like, did I miss that too? Get out of here.
No, no, no. The Fallible Man started with a book. I had all these women in my life. And for a long time, my wife and I had friends over. Like we'd have 14 people in my house once a week, every week. The majority of them were female. And I would listen to them complain about their boyfriends or their husbands, depending on where they were in their relationships. And I would have to translate men for these women in my life. They're like, oh, he's doing this. Like, okay, well, this is what he's actually doing. And
Oh,
I
wow.
started functioning as this translator, helping these women who don't understand how men think, right? Like, you need to write down this everything you know is in a book. That this is before the term mansplaining became a popular term, but like the warning bells just went off in my head. I'm like, no, no, I'm not going to write a book trying to explain men to women. But I did start thinking about it's like, okay, how do I? So I got 9 nieces, and I used to be a youth
Wow.
minister. Yeah, and so I've spent a significant portion of my life, like over 20 years of my life, around young girls, teenage girls, and stuff like that, junior high teenage girls. Um, and I started thinking, it's like, okay, what is the actual problem, right? I'm seeing broken hearts, I'm seeing frustration, I'm meeting these boys they're bringing home who just don't have a clue how to be a man. And I started looking at that problem and trying to solve that problem.
Hmm.
And so I started writing a book called what I was going to call The Fallible Man, which apparently is taken. It has nothing to do with that name. I don't understand that at all. But I started writing this book and it's like, okay, so I started looking into self publishing. And it's like, okay, if I want someone other than my wife and my mom to read this, I've got to build a fan base. And so I jumped onto social media because at the time, like everybody's like getting insta famous, right? I was like, okay, insta famous, no problem. Rory, it took 2 weeks for me to figure out. I hate hate social media. I'll try not to swear because I don't know if that's okay or not. But I
It is to a point, yes. So,
I have really strong F-bomb level words about social media.
okay.
Um, I do. I to this day, like the irony of the fact that I work in digital marketing and do social media for other clients.
Yeah.
It's not like my friends all laugh at me. They're like, ah, because they know how bad I hate social media. But it only took about 2.5 weeks for me to go, this sucks. I hate it. I'm not going to do this. This isn't going to work for me. And so I
Right.
started looking for a different platform. And that's when I've been doing public speaking since I was 11 years old. I've spoken in front of thousands of people. My dad was a preacher. I grew up in a ministry family.
Ah, okay.
And so I started leading worship in front of 200 people when I was 11 years old. Um,
Nice.
this is just, yeah, it's other people are terrified of public speaking. I'm like, I don't get it. Like, I don't, I've never understood why it's a problem for people.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, this is my superpower. I can talk. And so I started a podcast to work on the book. And I fell in love with podcasting. Right. I absolutely like I still have my first podcast up on YouTube. And I am so stiff and like, welcome to the fallible. Like, it is so painful to watch, but I keep it
Right.
there to help me keep that focus. But I just fell in love with podcasting as a platform. I started doing the YouTube video just as well. I'll record it and throw it up there, but the podcast audio is my focus. And so when I decided to do the children's book, yes, this will come back around.
Oh,
Sorry,
hey, I'm
everyone.
good. You just roll, man.
Uh, when I started the children's podcast, I figured, and I've been right so far, the YouTube channel has done better than the audio variation of it because people can see the pictures the way I do it. People can see the pictures. I have a camera up above my desk now. Originally, I'd read it, like flip the page like I used to my daughters. Now
Right.
I have a camera up above my desk that shoots down so you can see the pages that I flip them. I don't have to do that anymore.
Good idea.
Yeah, but I I already loved podcasting. I've been doing it for so many years already. It's like, okay, this is a great solution because now whether you just have a phone and you just want to listen to the story or you want to watch a story, you're still getting that. It's on two different options, right? People can listen or people can watch, which lets me reach more kids and help more kids. And I wanted parents to have a safe solution. So here it was. I get them on two platforms instead of one.
Nice. That
And
great
that's how we
story.
got to the podcast.
Great story. I love it, man. I really do. It's a very unique idea, and I applaud you for it. That's just really, really cool. So, everything that we do in this space, and when I say this space, I think it's about serving, husbands and fathers, serving men, is about just that. It's got to be about serving. It can't just be about making money. It can't be about trying to, blow up on social media. And I think that's why so many people start and fail in this space, because just
Yeah.
in the time, you've been doing it, I think, longer than I have. And in the time I've been doing it, which feels like forever, um, I have seen so many guys come and go and come and go and come and go. And then there's guys like us who are we're here. And I think the key to that is we're serving first. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This I agree with you. I've had the privilege to speak at a couple podcasts like seminars on podcasting, and for me, that's always when I started my journey in podcasting. I worked a full time job, 40 hours a week, sometimes 60 hours a week in the IT sector, uh, and this was my option to bring fulfillment to my life because I I hated my job, right? Um,
Yeah.
it was a good job. I did the job because it paid the bills and it provided for my family, but I hated work. It's just cold zeros and ones, fixing problems that usually other people created. And it was just, I felt so dead.
Yeah.
Um, the podcast started as a place for me to affect lives because so many years of my life, I end up in a training teaching role Like it's been the course of my life over and over and over again. No matter where I ended up in life, no matter what job, I've had a lot of different jobs. I always end up as the trainer somehow. I mean, I've been the trainer in construction industries. I've been the trainer in IT. I'm a certified personal trainer. I always, and I've been a youth minister. Like I always end up in this teaching position because that is where I feel gifted. That is where I feel fulfilled, is helping other people come up. I take joy when I see somebody I've gotten to work with just flourish. So many people I trained in the IT field went on to higher paying jobs, better companies. And I never was mad. It's like, oh crap, now I got to train somebody to replace you. It never once even crossed my mind.
Right.
It was, yes, this person that I helped reroute their life into a better position, into a better pathway. I worked with several people from a security team that we had and helped them transition into IT and get onto a career path that actually paid their bills and had, you know, vertical movement for them. And I still like I watch them on Facebook and I keep in contact with a couple of them. I'm thrilled every time someone takes off, every time I get a client who overcomes an injury or something that's been nagging at them in the gym, I just get excited about it.
Nice.
And podcasting has just been the best platform for me because of the reach, the possibility.
Sure. Now, on the Driven to Thrive podcast, that's obviously, very different than the other one. But
It is.
yeah, everyone who's again in this space, we have kind of a segment or an aim or a focus. Driven to Thrive broadcast. I've been saying that wrong. I'm sorry. Driven to Thrive broadcast, brother. Um, Tell me a little bit about that. What makes that a little bit different? What's your focus on that?
So my broadcast, and I got to be that obnoxious person who changes it up just because it messes up everybody to say broadcast instead of podcast. Uh, I actually modeled that after my friend. I have a friend, Brandon Eastman, who does the better. Sorry, Brandon. The better something pod broadcast. It's BBB, but
You're trying to
I
give him a
saw
plug. It's okay.
I am right, and I'm totally failing. um, I loved. I asked him about broadcasts instead of podcasts. It's like it's an interesting idea. It's a little. It stands out just a hair, you
Mhm.
know. And in a sea of podcasts, you got to do your best to stand out. But as opposed to a very conversational podcast, which absolutely nothing wrong with that. Every episode, my goal is actionable takeaways, right? If you're coming to the Driven to Thrive broadcast, you're not going to get a lot of conversation. You're going to get a lot of instruction and ideas. I'm going to share here's an idea or concept or a take on something that you can immediately put into your life and try it out. And not everything I present is going to take with every single person, right? There are too many variables, too many different things going on in people's lives. But my idea is with every episode, I want to give you an actionable takeaway that you can go, I'm going to try this and it may make my life better or it may not be what's right for me. But here's something. Here's one more thing I can try, one more tool I can apply to my life. Um, and so that is the focus of every single episode is here's something you can take as soon as you hit in today, as soon as the episode's over and go, you know what, I can try that. Right. I think a lot of men never get to align with their purpose because they're not encouraged to align with their purpose. We're not.
Yeah.
For men, generally, our evolution stops at the American dream. In fact, that's part of the tagline I talk about on my podcast at this point. There's nothing wrong with the American dream. Let me be very clear about that because I've offended a lot of men with that one. But I was saying, I got there. I got to the American dream. It took me till I was like 38, 39 to get there, but I got to the American dream, right? I've got the family. I got the 2.5 kids. I figured out what the other half is finally. It's taken me years to figure out what that half is for the 2.5 kids. It's the dog. That's what the half is.
Okay.
It's if you're a dog owner, you understand, right?
Right.
It's like having a half a kid. So I've got the house and the wife and the kids, and I've got a good job where I'm making by myself $90,000 a year, which I found out is very guys. If you're not making that, you're not weird. That's just it's actually incredibly rare. Less than 1% of men make over $100,000 a year by themselves.
Yeah.
Uh, less than 1%. The amount of men who make $80,000 a year by themselves or more is like a horribly small, like 0.7% or something. It is so hard to do that.
I
But I
believe that.
got into
Yeah.
where I was making that by myself in the IT sector. I had the family, I had the house, I had the dog. We went to church. We made just enough money to take a vacation every other year. It was the American dream. And I started looking around going, really? This is it? Like this is the thing. And it occurred to me, men are not taught there's more for them to do in life, that they have more to them, that there's more about them, that they're born for something bigger. I told you I've always ended up in a teacher trainer role in my
Hmm.
life. It doesn't matter what I do.
Right.
That it always comes back full circle to me teaching people something. Um, what I teach them has changed, but that's always what it routes back to.
Right.
And I that is when I feel fulfilled. That is when I feel like there's like I'm in the right place doing the right thing. And that the impact of that in your life of feeling like I have a purpose to live besides just this, right? The family, the house, the dog, that's amazing. And I told you, my family is the core of everything. Every single thing I do in my life, they're at the core of. Why I get up at the crack of dawn and start my day at 4 a.m., why I work out, why I eat certain ways. It's all about them. But moving beyond that, what do I give to the world? What do I bring to the world? And men are not taught that every single man out there, every man listening to the Power Man podcast right now, you have a purpose in your life that you are meant to live into. Because once you start living into that, the fulfillment you get out of your life, your relationships are richer, you're happier, you're healthier. And so, that is we're trying to give that to men with the Driven to Thrive broadcast. Here's one step, and that might be getting more organized on how you manage your time, because for a lot of guys, time is an issue, right? That might be how to connect with your wife and kids better. There are really 4 different zones in men that they come together to make you, and there's always space in one of those to grow. And you might be great in this one and this one, right? Your mindset may be great. You might be perfectly aligned in your health, but your relationships are struggling. And until you start to patch that, you won't hit this fulfillment.
Sure.
So that's the mission. Is we're just trying to equip men with the tools.
Nice. Earlier, you mentioned that strong men as leaders, that type of thing, kind of fixes everything. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that plays into your entire mission. I know how I feel about that. I know that I agree with that and why. And I think most of my listeners have heard me yap about it plenty. Um, I'd love to hear your take on why that's sort of the key to fixing so many things.
Sure. Um, so I think like a lot of men, I'm a stats guy, right? Like most, I think the majority of men, there's something about it, the way our brains are wired. We like numbers,
For
right?
sure.
Uh, and when you start looking at the stats, if you help men get back on track to where they are living fulfilled strong lives as men, where they are filling their roles, where they are in sync with who they're meant to be, all the stats that just dominate our society start to get fixed, right? We know just from the prison system alone that most guys who are doing hard time didn't have positive male role models in their lives. Most of them didn't actually have a dad. Like 80 some odd percent did not have a strong father figure. We know that most kids who are struggling in school don't have a strong present father figure. Now, I have to be very clear about that. There are a lot of dads, and I use that term loosely, men who have a child in their home who are not stepping up as a father, who are not present, who are not involved in their children's lives. I know every kid my children hang out with. I make an effort, and I'm not a very social person, to know their parents, at least know who their parents are, be able to connect them, and know what their parents do and what their life is like somewhat.
Hmm.
Why? Because they're in contact with my child. There are a lot of dads who are just there in body, but they're not there and they're not doing it, right? And that plays into those same statistics. So when I say they don't come from homes with strong male role models, that includes the men who just aren't really there, even though they're there. Uh, if you look at drug use, if you look at gang affiliation, if you look at behavioral, what we call behavioral issues, they all trace back to men not being present in the lives of young people. When men rise up and lead as strong men, we can reverse everything. We can reverse the growth of gangs. We can reverse the growth of violence. We can reverse the growth of drugs, right? Everything that you see statistics on, as far as this is an issue with our country, comes from weak men, are non-present men. The stats, right? I, I, I'm, I think the events of the last many years have made a lot of us skeptical of the science and uh,
All right.
right some studies, right? We've all seen studies that we now know were all BS.
Right.
If you jump down the uh, I will try and avoid politics here, just for safety.
Yep.
But I am excited about some of the new cabinet picks, particularly RFK.
Hmm.
Not because I think he is right about everything, but because the man sees a correlation in the processed crap we put in our bodies and the rise of disease in America. Because there is. I told you I'm a personal trainer, right? I'm into nutrition. I'm not a nutritionalist, but I'm into nutrition. I can't officially advise people on nutrition because I'm not a nutritionist,
Sure.
but I'm into nutrition. I've helped my mom lose 30 pounds. I've helped other clients lose weight. I've helped guys get bigger, right? I know a lot of what you do comes down to what you eat. I know the difference in kids who have, I used to, when I teach Bible school, when I was a youth minister, for a long time before when my wife and I first got married, we taught the fourth and fifth grade class a lot at our church. And I would actually buy a bag of apples on the way to church. And I would walk around while I was teaching class. And I'd pull out my pocket knife and I'd quarter apples and hand kids apples as I walked around and taught. Because I knew that 85% of those kids, and these are kids from generally healthier homes, right? We know from statistics, 85% of those kids had absolute trash for breakfast. They acted better, they thought quicker, they were more in tune because not only did I engage more senses while they watched me cut up apples and they tasted things, but they were actually getting healthy nutrition to feed their brain while we were talking. I had better classes. This worked all the way up into like teenagers. I could do this with teenagers and I'd have a better class. So I've known for a long time that your nutrition, what you put in your body, has a big correlation with the way you think, the way you act, the way you behave, right? So I think men set the tone for that by the example we set, right? My kids see what I eat. So that has to weigh on me as a man. Every choice I make has a direct impact on the community around me, starting with my wife, my kids. My mom lives with us since my dad passed. Every choice I make impacts them. They go out in the world and impact more people. My friends in town are impacted by the way I act and by the way I do things. That's other men, that's other women, that's other children. The kids that come over to my house to hang out with my kids are impacted by the way I act, right? If I start living my best life, making sure that people are seen and loved and appreciated, making sure that I'm setting the right example for people, then I start those people on a better path. If enough men step up and do that, all the problems, the drugs, the behavioral issues, crime, everything goes down.
100%. I could not agree with you more on every single thing you just said. I'm nodding my head going, yep, yep, yep. I agree completely. It's every single problem that we go through. During an election, it's funny because all those things sort of come to the forefront because that's what everybody's talking about. It's all the problems in the country, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But when you take any one of those and you just trace them back, well, how'd that happen? Okay, well, what caused that? Well, what caused that? And you just keep following the origin.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes back to being able to be fixed by strong men, all of it, no matter what, no matter where you
Mm-hmm.
fall. And I love that there's somebody else out there who actually just said those words. I feel vindicated. Thanks, man.
Glad to help.
Yeah, appreciate that very much. It's funny. If you don't mind me asking, did you have a strong male role model?
Oh, absolutely. I am so incredibly blessed. My father passed about 2.5 years ago. He passed right down the hallway from where I'm at right now.
I'm
My
sorry, man.
parents lived with me. Oh no, my parents lived with me the last couple of years. We were blessed. My dad had a massive coronary issue back in, I want to say 2016. Like he woke up in the middle of the night, ice cold with back pain. We now know that we have a familial heart disease that none of us were aware of
Oh, wow.
because no one had ever survived it before. My dad's uncles were all legally giants. They were all over 6'7", and nobody blinked an eye at a 6'7" heavy man dropping dead of a heart attack in the fields in Texas. Right? No one ever
Right.
questioned it. It turns out we actually have the same condition that killed John Ritter. It's a
Oh, wow.
aortic split. My father's heart, his aorta split 5 inches from the top of his heart, like
Oh,
vertically just split up the aorta. The only reason he survived is God smiled on him. The other reason is the aorta is a double walled artery, and it was the inner wall that split instead of the outer wall.
okay.
Um, and God smiled on him. Like he was in this tiny little town in California, and the visiting physician for the ICU recognized what was going on and got him a life flight to Sacramento, where the number one doctor in the world for that particular surgery is. And he happened to know him. Like he called him on his cell phone. He's like, "Hey, if I can get this guy to you alive, will you take him?" Because this guy travels around the world teaching. The surgery has an 80% mortality rate on a planned surgery. Like 80% mortality. You're going to die. Only the best cases survive because it is such a traumatic surgery for your body to go through. I was in North Carolina at the time, setting up a new site for my company. I've been there for 25 days. I was due to get on a plane the next day and come home after being gone for a month. And I get this phone call from my mom. And she's like, "You need to come now. And you need to be ready because your dad may very well be dead before you get here."
Oh, my goodness.
Uh, God smiled on us. Like I got there the next morning. My brother had driven down through the course of the night from Washington to Northern California. And He picked me up at the airport. My sister flew in, and my other brother started driving like 2 days later from Colorado. And we just descended on my parents' house. Uh, and the surgeon was like, I can't explain why your father's alive. He said, I'm the very best in the world. He should have died on the way here. He never should have gotten to me. He shouldn't have survived 12 hours of surgery. And my brother and I just laughed because my dad was a domestic missionary. My whole life, my dad worked with small churches. He's a domestic missionary. And my brother and I just laughed and looked at the doctor square in the eye and said, well, God's not done yet. That's the answer.
That's what I've been thinking the whole time.
And
Dad wasn't, he wasn't done with your
this,
dad.
right. And the surgeon was like, you know what? I can't even argue with that because there's not a plausible scientific reason why he's alive. So we ended up having my dad for another 5 years. God bless us with 5 more years. He caught an infection in the hospital. That's what actually killed him. It started at his toes and literally just killed his body from the feet up. It took
Oh,
5 years. Um, but I had 5 more years with my dad. And the last year and a half of his life, or a year of his life, he was here with my mom. They came and stayed with us. All of my nieces on my side of the family are adults. I'm the only one with little kids. And so my brother stayed with my dad, my mom stayed at my brother's house for a little while. And they chose to move down here because I still had little ones that they could see every day, whereas my brother's girls were adults. And so we had them, and it was a huge blessing because my daughters got to benefit from the same role model I had. My father was an amazing. My dad was a 6'5", 360-pound dude. He's a big man, but he was always a glass half full kind of person, right? He always chose to see the best in people. He always chose to love people, and he always made us a priority. My dad was at almost everything I ever did my whole life. Concerts, sporting events didn't matter. Never in my life, even at the worst moments of my life, did I ever doubt that my father loved me and my dad had my back. I wrecked my career. I'll like, give you an example. I wrecked my life in the military. I was in the military for a year, and a psychiatrist on the way out was like, wow, you hit every limb on the way down the street, didn't you? I've never seen a record like this.
oh wow.
I, I spent an extra week in basic training because I almost punched out my PI. Um, we got into it because I was the leader. I was a squad leader, and he balled out one of my guys because the guy had screwed up, which was totally legit. But then he started dragging the guy's wife and kid into it, talking shit about his wife and kid.
Hmm.
And he was like, "Does anybody have a problem with that?" I was like, "I do, sir. We got problems. You got no business. That man's wife and child is not in the military. You have no right. Like we got this close." And the he got in my face. I said, "Swing, mother effer. Give me an excuse to put you in the hospital tonight."
Oh my gosh.
And he de-escalated, and I spent an extra week in boot camp, right? And that was just the story. I got into special forces training, and I split the bone of my leg from my knee all the way into my ankle,
Oh my word. You were not
right?
supposed to be there, man. You were just not supposed
No,
to be
no.
there.
You know, I spent 5 months on crutches before I got moved to another training regiment where that guy had a chip on his shoulder and told me the day I got there I would never graduate. He's like, I know you special forces guys, you all think your crap doesn't stink. Like, dude, I was in school. I wasn't there. But like he took away all my privileges. He busted me down as low as he can inside the discipline system. Um, then he got someone to rat me out because I had a beer underage. I was still technically 20. It was like 4 months before my 21st birthday. He got an E1 to rat me out for having a beer. He tried to send me to rehab,
For a beer.
lockdown
Yeah.
rehab for a beer. That was after I had self-identified for help because I had gotten hooked on codeine while my leg was split.
Uh,
And so I had self-identified for that. I was like, I need help. And they did nothing. Like I got locked down for the weekend with no help at my own dorm. I get to make phone calls and talk to people, but like they cold turkeyed me off it with no supervision for 3 days. Um, and then tried to bounce me out. So I told them I wasn't going to rehab, and they bounced me out of the military for failing to complete rehab. I was
Wow.
like, yeah, I had some choice phrases. Like I had already been to the JAG Corps. This guy was abusing, like he was abusing his power with kids coming in for boot camp.
Yeah.
Like I almost threw him out of a window because this this dude, this 18-year-old kid, came out of his office in tears. I had taken this kid off base to get piercings. They were below the uniform, which is legal in the United States military, and they found out about it. They had him remove freshly piercings with rusty tin snips.
Hmm.
This
Why?
sweet Midwestern kid, because his understanding of the rules was it wasn't legal.
He just didn't
He's
like
like,
it.
it's not legal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just didn't
I
like
was like, no.
it.
According to kid came out, dude, like I said, he was this sweet kid. I've never forgotten this moment. 20 some odd years ago. This kid was this sweet Midwestern kid who just wanted to serve his country. And his only crime was he became friends with me and one of the other guys who was shit listed. Uh, but after that kid came out of there, man, it escalated. So I ended up out of the military, but this whole time, like my world is crashing down. I would not let my dad help. No, no, no. Right. I got to do this on my own. I'm going to be a man. Um, I finally hit a low point. I was like, fine, do what you can do because I can't do this anymore. They had me seeing a psychiatrist. I'd already tried to kill myself once. My paperwork for my discharge had burned to the ground, like in a building, it burned to the ground. So they had to start my out processing all over again. Like my life was this wrecking ball. And I finally told my dad, I was like, okay, you help. And I was going home soon after that.
Yeah.
Uh, I got really low. I went out one night with a bottle of tequila and I was like, well, either I'm getting out of here tomorrow one way or another. Like I had every intention to drink myself to death that night. And my dad never quit on me. And when I came home, I was welcomed with open arms. My dad had a vehicle with my engine had blown up on my car right before I left the military. So my dad had got me a small little crappy vehicle as the best he could do, but that way I had something to drive so I could start to put my life back together. And I had an amazing father. To the day he died, I'd get home from work. The last couple of weeks were a little rough. He was bedridden. But before that, I'd get home from work and he'd be sitting on my back deck with a cup of coffee waiting to talk to me when I got home from work every day. And so the difference that made in my life, when I was coming home from the military, I had this dawning realization that if I became half the man my father was, I will have lived a good life, which impressed on me how important it was for me to step up as a dad. When I started having kids, how critical it was that I showed up as the best dad possible because I was blessed to get the hindsight early on in the disaster I made of my life of how important that role was.
Wow, brother. Um, you were blessed. You were absolutely blessed. All
Yeah.
that stuff with your father and his health and the surgery that doesn't happen by accident. None of that
No.
happens by accident. And what I have found, I've talked to a lot of men like you and I who are in this space, have this mission, and one thing is an absolute certain, and that is that we either had the most incredible role model fathers, and we want to live up to that somehow and share that and spread that legacy that he started, you
Mm-hmm.
know, or we had the exact opposite. And it was the worst thing you possibly could imagine. And we're trying to make up for that to the world, but,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's why I asked you that. And, I mean, I appreciate you not flinching at all to jump right into that. It's not like we prepped for that at all, but,
Sorry.
no, I asked it because something told me that there was something there. And, brother, I mean, that's your mission. That's where this all comes from, isn't it? Yeah. You were blessed, absolutely blessed. I love how
It was
grateful you are
exciting
for it.
because he
Yeah.
was there when it started. That was one of the great moments with my dad was there to see this start.
Oh, that's awesome.
He he used to tease me about my non-ministry because I was like, Dad, we're not religious based. He's like, yeah, it's not a ministry. You're just helping people, serving people, trying to improve their lives with very biblical core concepts. But it's not a ministry. Yeah, you're non-ministry. Like he'd
I
love to
see.
tease me about it.
Did he want you
Uh,
to follow into the ministry?
I actually, so that's how I ended up in the military. I was running away from God. Um,
Oh boy, wow.
Jonah had a big fish. I had a year in the Air Force and a complete train wreck of life. And I still ended up in ministry after that, even though that's what I was running from. That was what finally, like, okay, God, I'll stop running. And all of a sudden I was on a bus home. But that's a whole nother story. Uh, but
It's funny
I
how
went
that
in
works,
ministry.
though.
I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
in ministry for a couple of years and we worked together actually on a couple of big projects. Him and I were directors on a big conference here in the Pacific Northwest. So we worked together there on that, which was very exciting. And when I stepped out of ministry, he was completely okay with it. For me, there was a very clear window stepping in and stepping out. It was like God was like, okay, you did the thing I needed you to do. And like looking back at that time in ministry, I know exactly why I was there and who I was there for. And I've gotten to see what's come of that. So it's utter clarity. But he didn't care that I didn't stay in ministry. I'm involved in our local church in my way. Um, we enjoyed working together when I was. I always helped whatever church we were at anyway. But that's how I actually got into youth ministry was working with the teens at the church we were at the time. But then I started doing this, and he was just thrilled to see. It's like you found your place. Like this is what you're supposed to do. Like for my dad, it was utterly clear that I was doing what I'm supposed to be doing before I was sure about it. Before I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. Like I'm some idiot with a microphone, trying to make an impact. But I mean, I'm banging my head against the wall. Men are like we're stubborn creatures, and the last thing we want to be told is that we're wrong or we need help. Like
Right.
when I told my wife who my target audience was going to be, she's like, "Could you have picked a harder audience?" Well, it wasn't bad enough working with teens. Now you want to work with men? Are you insane? Men don't want to be told they're wrong. Men don't
No.
want to be told they don't understand it. Men don't want to be told they need help. We're the last ones who want to accept help because for some reason we think it makes us weak.
Yep.
And she's like, "Really? Of all the people, okay." But my wife was amazing. It was like, I, oh yeah, you were picking a huge target. Okay, go for it. And it's just been a godsend in that. I'm actually really blessed. Her dad, my father-in-law, was not a perfect man, but he's done the best he knew how to do. And considering his father, he's done really well. Um, but he's actually a fan. He listens to the show.
Oh, that's great.
He has actually sent me stuff. He's like, "Oh, you should see this, Brent," because of what I do. But my wife actually was better suited for this than I realized. My father-in-law was an entrepreneur before that was popular. My father-in-law had multiple businesses over the years. The county ran him out of business at one point. They changed the zoning on his property and totally hosed one of his businesses.
Hmm.
Um, and so, but he had multiple businesses over the years, and they had the ups and downs of having a dad who was an entrepreneur. And so, I'm not going to lie, we've spent more money on this than we've ever made on this. Uh, I stopped working for a while because I had a marketing guy who was like, "You're right there to monetize," and he could never explain why I couldn't make a full time living off my podcast. And so, but I mean, I left the security of my job, started working on doing this full time. We tapped our entire life savings, drained all of our investments, and we're still not making a living off this. We're making progress on making a living off this, but we're still not making a living off this.
Yeah.
But because of that journey with her father, my wife has been completely behind me on this. And I was like, we're getting there. A little bit of time, we're getting there. Little by little, we're making a little more money doing this. She's working two jobs right now, part-time jobs, while I work part-time for a marketing company, and we're making it work. But her ability to not only understand but support this crazy journey of entrepreneurship and
Right.
going my own direction has been absolutely crucial. But she also sees how much happier I am, how much more fulfilled I am, how much more on point I am on everything because I am moving in the direction. Like I said, we're not to a full time living yet on it, but we're making a little farther all the time. But the person I have become, living in alignment with who I'm supposed to be, my wife loves that person. My children love that person.
Yeah. That's important,
And
brother.
so, right, you absolutely cannot do things alone. You need a support system. And if you're married, if you don't have the support of your spouse, you're screwed.
Yep. Oh, 100%.
That's got to be totally in alignment. You got to be together on the same page. And so, yeah, it's this. My dad, he laughed. Like I said, he got to see this all start. Um, I wish he could. He wasn't around when I started Read Me a Story, Dad. My mom actually pays for my podcast hosting for Read Me a Story, Dad, because I didn't have a solid enough income to start doing another show. And
Oh,
she's like, yes, I want you to do this. And she brought me a stack of children's books. And she's like, how much does the hosting cost you? I was like, it's only $20 a month. I just couldn't commit that with my business at the moment, which for there are going to be people listening like, you couldn't commit $20 a month. You shouldn't be doing it. Well, that's trust
that's
me, the trail of entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart.
right. It's never just that in a
Um,
bubble. I mean,
right,
it's just, it's not just that one thing. It's that on top of everything else
right.
that you're dealing with. And people who haven't walked the walk don't understand at all. So I get you. I get
I used to think I got it until I started doing it, and it's like, oh yeah,
you. Oh, yeah.
entrepreneurship has been an interesting road. Doing my own thing, going my own way, but as hard as it is sometimes, living in alignment with who I was meant to be, living with this bigger mission, this bigger purpose, in alignment with the way God made me, the person that God made me to be,
Yeah.
living in that mission. Men need a mission. We desperately need mission.
Amen.
And living in alignment with that purpose and that mission, everything in my life gets better. Like I said, we're thriving as a family. Um, I have more male friends. I have more friends in general. I have healthier friendships. I have good people around me. And it all comes back to what we do on the podcast, what we talk about on the podcast. We're not perfect, but we're finding our way, and we're hopefully helping men on the way through.
I love it. I love it. I stay the course, brother. You know what I mean? You're going to get there. I mean, you're doing everything that you got to do, and I love it. I love that your dad got to see that.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that your dad got to see that. That's like the perfect end to that particular story on that
Mm-hmm.
topic. Congratulations, and I love that you're aware of the blessings that you have in your life too. Not everybody is. I find that when I'm working with men, very often we have a plethora of blessings in our lives that we haven't really taken account of. Because we're so focused on all the things that are wrong that we really haven't stopped and said, what do I have that's right? And since the beginning of this, the interview podcast episode, you've been crediting your wife for all the help that she's given you and how awesome she is, your family, how important they are to you, your parents, your father. You you are grateful. You do understand, you're where you need to be grateful and what you have in your life. That is a gift. That really is. A lot of people can't get there.
Thank you.
No, thank you for sharing all that stuff, and for putting up with my question out of left field. Because man, I mean, we really got to find a whole lot out about Brent today. Which
Sorry.
no, that was the point. That's the point. I love your format of your podcast. in terms of like, you bring the information, you're here, there's a purpose and a focus, and that's your jam. That's how you roll. And on mine, I just have a different, way of doing it. I want to bring stories to guys, and I want to show guys that, everybody has a rags to riches story or something that happened to them that knocked them down. Everybody's got an adversity they overcame to get to where they are today. And really, no matter who you are. And I think it connects with some guys because a lot of men feel
Mhm.
very alone, especially after, not to be political, but after the last 4 or 5 years, man, men feel alone
Oh yeah.
right now. If you're not connected to a brotherhood, if you don't, have your ducks in a row and you don't have any idea how to be grateful. Um, and I think that's, to kind of start wrapping this up. I know you got business, you got things you got to do too, and you got up at 4 o'clock in the morning for this, man. Kudos to you. So, um, I always ask my people when they're on for, a little bit of advice to give to some folks, and I'd like to maybe challenge you on that today. I know you've got a million pieces of advice you can give to anybody um, because you're very prepared, you're purposeful, you're on point, you're on mission. The men who feel unbelievably alone out there, who don't have that support structure that you have, that you are so grateful for, that didn't have a dad like you had. Maybe they had one more like mine. Um, what's your advice to them as they try to find that purpose, as they try to pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and very often, especially at the beginning, start trying to make it alone in this world for something better for them and their family?
So many answers for this.
You
um,
take this anywhere you want to go, because I know right now you could go like 18 different directions.
right. Yeah.
Take it wherever you want to go, brother, and it doesn't matter.
You have to, I guess my best advice is you have to start with your why on your motivation for it. Especially starting out alone. And I would definitely say you need to start finding community ASAP. The faster you tie into community, the faster and easier process will be for you, the better it will be for you. Uh, that is so critical. And it took me a long time to learn that. But to get there, you have to find. My business coach used to say, you got to go beyond the why. You have to get the why behind the why behind the why behind the why, like 5 levels,
Nice.
because most people never answer that question. And it's my favorite question of all time. My best friend hates that question. Like I'm so deep in his head. Like he's talking to me and he'll say something and he's like, right, right, right. And the why behind that, because he knows I'm going to ask, because we do so many things out of habit. Over 89% of our daily life is habit, right? They're hard ingrained. Why you pick the peanut butter you eat at home, why you pick the mayonnaise in your fridge, right? It's all habit. And it's habit that comes down from traditions and thoughts that were handed down to you by the people ahead of you. Most people have no clue why they do 99% of the stuff they do. They just do it habitually. And that's because we don't live intentionally. To actually change that, to change where you're at, you have to deeply connect with the why you want to change. And it can't be superficial, right? It's the same problem I have with clients in the gym who just want to lose some. Why do you want to lose the weight? Well, I just feel like no, that doesn't work for me. Like I've turned away clients. Superficial doesn't hold because that why and connecting with that truly deep why is what will anchor you in the barrage of storms that are going to come. When you try and change, your life is going to get bombarded. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. You're going to be tired. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to struggle. And God knows you're going to want to quit because staying with the status quo of your life is easy. And every part of your body at a biological level and at a mental level and emotional level wants to stay in that comfort. It wants to stay there and it's going to fight you. And the only way you weather the battles you're going to have to face and the storms that are going to come at you is you have to have a why that is so deep and pure that no matter what happens to you, you are tethered. And you got to start there.
That's great. I've never actually heard that, dive 5 times down on the why. But that makes so much sense because, people talk about that a lot. What's your why, right? And I mean, everybody gives a trite answer at first. Well, yeah, my family, right? Yeah, but really?
Exactly.
Is it really? You know what I mean? Yeah. And, but when you dig, when you take it a step further, okay, but why?
Mm-hmm.
But why? I like that a lot. That sounds simple, but that's incredibly complex. If you go down 5 levels, brother, that's why, but why, but why. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
My friend doesn't. My best friend hates it. We've been friends for like 18, 19 years.
Right.
And I've always asked this question because I'm that guy. I want to understand why people do things. I'm fascinated by people. And so I've done this to him for 18 years. At this point, he does it to himself. And like his life is going, the difference in his life since he started answering those questions and digging deep
Yeah.
has been profound.
Yeah.
Once he
Nice.
started getting off autopilot and into being intentional, life began to evolve for him a lot.
Yeah.
But most of us never get past that surface level. That's why I hate the sayings like, well, find your why. No, no, no. You have to go deeper than that
Right.
because our why is going to be some superficial answer that, like, oh, yeah, it makes sense. No.
No, that's not it. I love it. I do. I love it. Brent, thank you, man, for coming on the podcast, for sharing everything, for being you, for being open and honest. I mean, and telling all my listeners an incredible story. You got all the pieces, man. Your story of redemption. You know what I mean? The whole 9 yards. Your belief system's solid. I love it. I mean, obviously, you and I are in lockstep on so many things. So, I really, you said at the beginning of the podcast, it's like brother from another mother. I really do feel like that, like I'm talking to right now. So, thank you, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Rory, thank you for having me. I always feel blessed when I get to go on other people's shows because I feel lost too. I've been doing podcasts for years now. I still feel lost on this side of the mic. Um,
Right?
but the fact that you would let me talk to your audience and the group at Power of Men, just thank you. And to all you guys listening, thank you for letting me be here today and hang out with you guys.
That's awesome. That rising tide raises all ships, man. That's how it works. 100%. All right, gentlemen, you have heard from a truly powerful, incredible man that I'm honored to have on the program today. Um, Brent Dowlen, host of the Driven to Thrive broadcast and the super cool Read Me a Story Dad podcast, which I'm going to be checking out right after I get off of here. Um, Brent, I didn't ask you. I want to make sure I get this out to everybody. If somebody wants to contact you, best way.
So I told you we just went through a major rebrand. So
Hmm.
the best place, the home field is purposedrivenmen.com.
Got it. Purpose-driven-men.com. Gotcha. All right, guys, reach out if you want to connect with Brent. Go for it. Like I said, rising tide raises all ships. If you feel connected to Brent, you owe it to yourself to contact him. All right, that's how it works, gentlemen. The reason that we do this, the reason that we have these powerful men on these broadcasts, the reason we have people come on that have overcome adversity and have handled things that you know would make most men cry, frankly, is because if we can do it, so can you. I know right now you're really worried about your life. I know right now you're sacrificing for everybody else. At some point, guys, you got to do something for yourself too. All right. You don't do it in place of everybody else, but you got to do it in addition to everybody else. You got to make yourself a priority. You got to get out there and you got to help yourself. You got to grow. You got to become the leader that you know you can be because you're worth it. And at some point, you got to believe it. Until next time.